Hello, I am Patrick Hayashi, and I'm going to talk about and celebrate a very important personal milestone in my life and my passion. 20 years of Patrick Lou Band in the music scene and worldwide. Sit back and enjoy this one, guys. This one is going to be a longer and in-depth podcast in regards to many different subjects matters from start to present day. I was born in San Francisco, California on November 15th, 1985 at approximately estimated time of 6:45 in the morning. I was born to mixed Asian descent parents actually. I was born to a Chinese father named Winston and a Japanese mother of mixed descent named Winnie Liu actually. God rest her soul. The early years of my life were far from glamorous. I don't think about my personal problems from my past early on in life too much, but I'll try to dissect as much as I possibly can in this longer in-depth video celebrating my 20th anniversary as PLB. So, one thing you gotta know about me, or what might some people might not know about me overall, is I lost my paternal grandfather at an early age of 4 on July 11th, 1989, and that was one of the first early shockwaves that sent me to a long and winding road, not to quote a Beatles song, a title of a Beatles song that is, in the life of that I live today to present day. And my grandfather Wayne was actually the man who gave me my name, Patrick. Originally I was gonna be named Alan Luth, my father. I know. Doesn't sound very rock and roll, right? But my dad, my grandfather stepped in just a day or night before I was conceived and born out of the womb, basically. That was going to be named Patrick Allen Liu and stuff like that on November 15th, 1985, all those years ago. Today I'm 35 years old, and before I get to the nitty gritty of of leading up to the present day, I'm going to talk about some things in regards to my early life. So apparently, my grandfather Wayne died when I was almost 4 years old on July 11th, 1989, and it sent proverbial shockwaves, a lot of grief and mourning on my behalf because I lost a close father figure that I had that I never had, until that day happened. So like what happened after that was my mom was the one who was going to raise me for the next several years and decades into my life until my mother passed away on April 8th of 2017, which was about 4 years ago. I was primarily raised by my mother, Winnie, God rest her soul, and my father was around. He was a good dude, of course, but we always had our differences, which I'm not gonna get into many details about. My father was always working on the road, and I was left for my mom to raise me, my brother, and my K-Fab sister Madeline. And on May 11th, 1992, I moved here in the Excelsior district in San Francisco. I ain't gonna give you my personal physical address location because obvious reasons, but I moved to this very home with my family on May 11th of 1992, and I went to various elementary schools at the time. I went to Hillcrest starting around 1990 in kindergarten, and I left Hillcrest to transfer to Guadalupe Elementary School in 1992 and graduated there from middle in fifth grade in 1996. Early on in life, I was struggling with a lot of deficiencies and a lot of personal drama and traumatizations in my behind the scenes, really behind closed doors, because a lot of these things I would not really want to get into. I don't wish anyone to deal with on my behalf or on their behalf, of course. But I lived it. So what I did to get my mind off the things I was dealing with at the time was I got into music at a fairly early age. I was listening to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and a lot of boomer type of music from my mother's generation because we had the vinyl records at home at the time. And I would watch professional wrestling, mainly WWF, which is now called World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE, the old WCW or WCW, ECW, all the other territories and stuff like that on cable television on various networks and stuff like that, and video games. that's what I did to really distract myself from all the troubles I was dealing with growing up, and I went to middle school and I actually repeated fifth grade upon transferring to rooftop. Don't ever go to that school; it kind of sucks. But maybe it gotten better since then. But when I went there, it was all hell, because that's when it really opened my eyes to racism and segregation for the first time early on in life. When I went to that school, I was the only East Asian male of descent and student in my graduating class, or in the class I was attending until I finished rooftop on June 1st of 2000. Yep, and there's a lot of things about that school I would not want to get into either. I wouldn't really wish it on anyone to go through that, really. Back in those days, you were a man. You had to suck it up and deal with the punches and roll with it. But they didn't really understand how sensitive some people can take these traumatic experiences they were brought up experiencing early on in life. So it was not a very pleasant experience back in those days, in the pre-internet days of growing up as a kid in the '90s. I mean, of course, we didn't have to worry about like the cyberbullying, the social media, the technology, and all this shit. We all get our information through the television right over here, but it was the size of a boxy looking boob tube TV set back in the days with CRTs. But I didn't really enjoy my run in middle school because I had very few friends when I went there. My closest friend I made at Rooftop was a guy named Spencer, this really cool punk rocker kid, and a few others. But I had no sense of what I was grasping at the time when I was going to Rooftop in the late '90s, because I was bullied a lot, and there was a lot of heated moments here and there, and I really didn't enjoy my run there. But to escape a lot of this trauma I dealt with growing up, I went to Hong Kong for the first time in 1995. My mother is a, pardon me, my mother is a Sino-Japanese descendant, originally from Japanese Taiwan. Her family left Japanese Taiwan following World War II to escape the post-war depression and all that kind of stuff. And they relocated and started a new life and start fresh by relocating to British Hong Kong at the time. And that's where my family was born, raised, and brought up for the next, till God knows how long. But in summer '95, at the time I known very little about my heritage. I was just simply an American guy brought up with an Asian face at the time. Really, no knowledge of my actual background. I mean, there was a stupid reason why I didn't want to go to Hong Kong at first, which was no white girls and Latin girls in HK, or not very many of them, and they wouldn't be showing like Beavis and Butthead and Ren and Stimpy on cable TV out there. I'm like, God damn it, Patrick, what were you thinking? But when I went there, it was a very good experience. My expectations were shattered in a very, very good way. I mean, I was very close with my mother's family overseas, and it woke me up and gave me some in-depth insight to my heritage at the time as an Asian American male of Japanese and Taiwanese descent and all that. But I traveled a lot with my family for family vacations over the years when I didn't have much of a crew to call a secondary family. Keep in mind that I didn't really have very many blood relatives or biological family living in Northern California. They're all scattered in my mother's homeland in Asia, whereas my father's relatives are up in Canada mostly, and didn't really have a lot of family, didn't really have a lot of friends, but so what my mom did and my father did during our free time when things were all right was we would go on vacations together to places like Las Vegas, Disneyland, and all those kinds of places, Seattle, and simple places we always wanted to go to when we were kids, But it's around the time when I was in 8th grade that I met my cousin Andy, who was studying at City College of San Francisco as a foreign exchange student at the time. And he was like a straight up metalhead kind of guy. He was into like Sabbath, Deep Purple, and Hendrix, and all these other classic rock and metal artists and stuff like that. And he played guitar too. And like, originally my plan as a guy that got older was, why can't I be just like a professional wrestler like Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart, or maybe even like draw graphic design for once, because also my first original talent was graphic design in a very primitive form. So my cousin Andy was playing the guitar. I'm like, yeah, that is pretty fucking amazing, man. That's pretty dope. So I'm like, I decided that was my true calling card. My cousin coming to the America to study for the short amount of time he came to the United States to, and he was playing my brother's old guitar he got for his 15th birthday, which he left sitting dusty in the bedroom and an amp in the closet. So that's when I started learning how to play guitar. And in eighth grade, I was just struggling to find my own voice. I was not very having a very good time at rooftop. I was getting bullied left and right. I was getting called racial slurs and being belittled and judged from my peers, and like I didn't really want to be there honestly at the time. So like during the second semester of eighth grade in the year 2000, I basically cut half of the semester and just stayed home literally just to play video games and watch television like Jerry Springer reruns on daytime TV. Sometimes the guidance counselor would sometimes call my house phone or telephone number at the house and say, "Hey, can I speak to Patrick's parents, please?" I would just tell them, "Go away. I don't want to be at school. I don't belong here." Just hang up the telephone, go about my usual thing, playing the video games, watching TV, and Sometimes if I had like a little bit of lunch money saved up, I would walk to the liquor store near my house and just buy a sandwich and soda and chips and just eat it for lunch. But yeah, it was a very traumatic experience I had to go through at the time. It really opened my eyes to how we're all divided as human beings, and how we couldn't really relate to one another at the time, and it would serve as a lifelong purpose, which I would later do as Patrick Luban to take over and serve my purpose as I got older, and hopefully change some lives here and there, even though that was never my intention. I left Rooftop in the summer of 2000. I was 15. I was about to be 15 years old, so I went to Wallenberg High School throughout my run as a high school student in the year 2000. New school, new drama. I was developing a lot of suicidal tendencies at the time, and I was really unhappy about what I was dealing with at the time in the family because my parents would often argue about like me and Ricky and Madeline's future as we got older. My cousin Andy already left San Francisco back home to go live with us and start fresh again in Asia, in British Hong Kong. Well, it was now at the time called Hong Kong, China, or Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of China, so to speak. And there's a lot of other things I was dealing with too, like my childhood girlfriend Betty relocating to a different city in the Bay Area. And we didn't really speak to each other again until like 3 years later, really, on the telephone. And I felt very lost, very, very dissonant, and very, and I didn't know where I really stand at the time. So when I went to Wallenberg for the first time, I had this guitar on me. I was taking a couple of lessons as a guitar player, and I was also told by my mom, "You will not start a rock band and pursue your dream of or passion for playing music until you properly learn how to play these musical instruments." So I was like taking piano lessons at this one Chinese music school at the time in the early 2000s, and I was learning guitar briefly with a guitar teacher, but I eventually grew tired of learning by the book as a guitar player and piano player initially. So I decided to teach myself how to do these kinds of things. And what I did was, keep in mind, these were the days before YouTube and all these kind of apps. You could learn how to play a musical instrument and stuff like that, And I basically read by the book by myself and just taught myself how to do it gradually by reading the book and applying what I learned from the book onto my musical instruments. To this very day, I know very little music theory, and I don't know technique like my peers do in this scene, really. But that's what I did, though, and that would become a crucial element towards Patrick Luban's sound later on as our career progressed, in the indie music scene. So when I was in high school, I really wanted to start a rock band, like a garage band, like something to do to kill time and get away from all this insanity that were just plaguing us before the bell rang, and I was always an average student in school compared to the stereotypical Asian American / Asian person for that matter. I didn't really care about school back then. All I really cared about was making music, trying to make it in music or in a rock band or TNA or professional wrestling, television, video games or any of that sort. I didn't give a fuck about school back in those days because it didn't really interest me. It's not the fact that I wanted to hate on school when I was growing up. It's because I couldn't relate to any of the people I was dealing with at the schools I went to. So I was kind of like this troubled kid, this reject, struggling to find his own place in society in this world, you know. So what I did was my mission was to start a garage band. That was step one, and step two was basically learn how to play music better with these cats in that garage. So, pardon me, it's just really cold these days. There's like a strong windstorm going on. I don't have COVID though, guys, so no worries. I'm a test negative. But going back, like I started my first band, or garage band in high school in early 2001. I remember like the Christmas the year before, my mother bought me this 4-track Porta Studio from a music store in Haight-Ashbury, which in San Francisco, and I would use that to lay down demos and ideas of songs I was writing. I was already writing songs early on when I started playing guitar, my own material, as rudimentary as it was. Some of this can be heard on the PLB box set you can hear on Spotify, Apple Music, all the other platforms, called History Part 1. But that's what I did though, and I shared my tapes to people, small amounts of people, thinking I would get somewhere and maybe like land a gig or land an actual garage band, because I was very persistent and desperate to actually start a band with friends or anyone I knew to play guitar with, you know. So I met this one cat named Eddie, and my friend from Chinese class named Tommy, and we started the first incarnation of Patch Glue Band in early 2001. Dates often vary, of course, but 2001 is the starting point of where it already all began, you know. And we would often like play music together after the school when the bell rang, whenever we could, sporadically over the next few years, or the course of the next few years, in either Eddie's basement in his house in the marina at the time, or even my house in San Francisco in the Excelsior. But our plans was like we just wanted to play music. We didn't really have any wildest dreams or any like aspirations to become mainstream artists or anything like that. Neither me or Eddie Blackburn could sing very well at the time, and we were just relegated to rocking out our instruments like da 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 da, kind of like that, you know. We didn't really want to like make it as far as like becoming superstars was concerned. That was like the furthest thing from our minds and our plans, as far as I know. But little did I know, I really loved doing music, you know. I just really enjoyed, on the primitive recording equipment I had at the time, was recording these song ideas and these demo mixtapes and stuff like that, and sharing them with people in school and with family members and stuff like that. So I remember around 2001 or 2002, I used this one aux cable and exported my entire demo tape onto my computer at the time, my desktop computer. And this was around the time when these desktop computers were not as strong enough to be capable of running digital music technology and services. So what I did was I exported the cassette tape I recorded on the Porta Studio, also my earlier material, and I got it on the computer hard drive, and I just uploaded it on the computer on one of these websites. I can't really seem to remember, but I think I have a screenshot of it somewhere on my Patch Glue Band verified Facebook page on the internet. Just search it up if you can, though. So probably one of the photo albums, but you know, that's what I did though, and I just kept on going and going and going. But around the mid 2000s, right after high school, I figured it was a time where like Eddie was going his own way, I was going my own way, and Tommy was going his own way. We really didn't have any time to play together anymore, and I was quite bummed about it at the time, you know. And there's a lot of things I won't get into in regards to that, you know, looking back. But I was already putting myself out there on the internet, as rudimentary as it was, on DSL modem back in the early mid 2000s, with the band that was going to be eventually rebranded as PLB later on. And keep in mind, back in those days, we were under a different band name, various different band names even. You can look up my name on AllMusic, Patrick Lew, LEW, and you can search up all these formal band names of Patrick Lew Band prior to the year 2009, you know, and like, that shows you evidence that I've been doing this for quite some time with PLB, even if we're under a different band name or pseudonym or not, or stage name, whatever you want to call it, you know. But I started going to college at City College of San Francisco, and I didn't really feel like I really belonged at the time, you know. Like, it was like high school part one or part two, more like part two, but you just really can't really truly transition to life right after high school, right afterwards, because it ended in such a bad note. Really, I had a friend, former friend, named Amy from high school, actually, who had unrequited feelings for me at the time, and she did something to me that, looking back, that I would never really look back on fondly as I got older to the day I die. And she did something very shady to me that really caused me to lose my reputation in high school, and which I never really fully forgiven her for. But it is what it is today, you know. She friend zoned me maybe like more than like 3 times, you know, not to pull Maury Povich, you know, but she always friend zoned me though, and she never really gave me the benefit of the doubt to really be my best friend or partner at the time. And I always was struggling to find a girlfriend, even to this very day, when this whole thing was going on. And I remember at the end of high school, and it was when me and Amy would never become friends ever again. I was very hurt for a long time because of that, you know, and I felt some sense of loss. I lost identity because of that too. So I wrote a song with Patch Luban, which was not heard until worldwide until last year on the Codebreaker LP, "My Pet Amy," which I wrote a song which was in response to her actions following high school, as like a diss kind of song. Like, it was a very silly, moronic kind of punk rock song done on acoustic guitars on a chorus pedal, but it's there though. I wrote that song primarily about my experience dealing with one of my first major betrayals from someone who I thought was my close friend and partner at the time, or could have been my partner at the time. And I was going to City College, and parents were not getting along, arguments, he said, she said, kind of bullshit. Sorry, Fred Durst, but you know, it was not a very good time for me, really. You know, like, I was struggling to transition to even further my education at City College at the time. So what I did was, the year after I first went to City College, I told my mom and dad, "Fuck this shit. I'm fucking tired of these fucking people not giving me a chance to be heard. I'm fucking getting tired of being left out. I'm getting fucking tired of everything. I'm sick and tired of all these goddamn people not understanding where I'm coming from and belittling me and judging me on all this bullshit." I told my mom and dad up front, and I told them, and my dad asked me, "Then what do you want to do then?" I just told them, "I want to work on my music career. I really want to do music full time. I don't care if I'm the loser or saddest sack on the planet, or I'm the biggest guy and biggest top dog in San Francisco. I'm gonna do it no matter what, you know." And even if it was such a long shot, as far as I know, according to my parents' perception of what I could have been, because my parents originally wanted me to be a lawyer after I graduated from college. They wanted me to go to law school at John F. Kennedy University in Pleasant Hill. But I thought rock and roll was a better thing for me to do, because that's what I was born to do. I truly realized that as I got older, you know, and that's what I did basically. And you know, I but under the pressure of my parents, they forced me to go to another college or cram school for one semester at the time. And you know, it was the greatest and worst thing that had ever happened to me, because if I didn't went there, I would have never met my best friend David Arcel, who later joined Patrick Luban and my later band Diverse. And I would have never like experienced life up front, feeling part of a community united, really, at the time, of course, until we all grew apart gradually, you know. And I remember at the same time, I was in a recording studio. I got this like credit card in the mail without knowing how it works and all that kind of shit. You know, we all make stupid mistakes when we're young. I had a credit card, so what I did was I booked time in a local recording studio with Patrick Luban, and I basically recorded a whole LP, or partially a whole LP, called Jump, Rattle, and Roll, which was under its former name Revenge, with a former band named Band of Asians, but was rechristened as Patrick Luban's debut album, which was released worldwide on my 21st birthday. And the rest was history, you know. I must have put myself into $6,000 in credit card debt without even a job, steady, stable paying job at the time, because during the 2000s, I was being supported by my mom. All I just wanted to do was music this, music that, music this, music that, acting this, acting that, you know. Like, I didn't want to get a job, really, because I wanted to make my dreams come alive and follow my dreams, really, you know. And that's what happened. So on November 15th, 2006, I released my first major studio album and stuff like that, which was based off those sessions I booked at the local recording studio at the time to make those records, to create that kind of music. The rest was history. In 2007, that's when I basically graduated from being this like amateur level hobby type of musician. That was almost when I was originally on my way to start off my road and journey to becoming a semi-pro, which stands to this very day in my music career, And I was playing these small shows. I have one man to thank for giving me these small shows on campus at City College when I went back in fall 2006. His name was Diamond Dave. I'm a Diamond Dave guy, just like CM Punk is a fucking Paul Heyman guy. I mean, if it weren't for Diamond Dave, I would have never gotten these shows booked to perform on campus at City College at the time. And he saw something in me that very few people would quite admit at the time. Right? Very few people saw in me, but he saw right through me the right way. And I started playing these shows with PLB as in City College sporadically in 2007. And I was already recording a lot of music at home. But so what I did was around the same time frame, I had this financial aid money from college that I got from FAFSA at the time. But rather than just spend it on education and school and all that bullshit, what I did was I upgraded my musical equipment, I upgraded my musical arsenal, and I just invested into my own home recording studio. Because at the time, we had to really, the only way we really, at this point, computers were getting more advanced enough to incorporate digital music technology and software to like create all this cool shit. And I figured the only way I could evolve as a songwriter or a musician or composer was I had to do it through computers. And at the time, I really didn't know how to do that. So I got that FAFSA financial aid check and I cashed it in. Went to Guitar Center the next day, bought a hell of shit, and took it back home. Boy, my mom and dad were like, "What were you doing, Patrick? This was supposed to be for your college." I'm like, "This is what I want to do. You have to understand the fact that this is what I wanted to do since Andy came to America for the first time. This is my true calling. I'll still finish college, but I want to make it in this industry, whether it's big or small. I don't give a fuck, But that's what happened. So 2007 was like one of those years where I was like, yeah, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and I signed up for YouTube for the very first time. What you're watching on my channel, I started this YouTube channel on February 2nd, 2007. Uploaded my first video like maybe towards the end of the year. It was a very rudimentary piece of shit video of me rocking on my guitar, which my former friend took of me in my bedroom one afternoon or one evening after band practice, right? And that's so what. So the new thing about this, but 2007 was actually a very crucial, pivotal year of the development of PLB. We're still under a different band name, but we're actually starting to put ourselves out there that would make us no longer categorized as the amateur level band or musicians in a garage band. We're actually taking ourselves out there, putting ourselves out there on the World Wide Web. And I went on CD Baby to like sell and distribute my album, with my first album professionally made worldwide. At the time, you could only buy the record on CD Baby. There was like no iTunes or Spotify back then, And I was invited by Derek Silvers, the former CEO of CD Baby, to go to their record release party in Bottom of the Hill Club in San Francisco on April 2007, and did that. And then worked with a bunch of cool musicians. Didn't have any of my merch with me, but it was fun though, regardless. Towards the end of the year, I figured that like, man, I gotta figure out what to do with this music thing, because like the members are coming and going and floating. They're not really committed, so to speak. I'm like the only constant member of this band. It's like, what can I really do to really up my A game as far as the music is concerned, and taking it out there, really. Look, I'm only 21, 22 years old. I'm not really expecting so much out of this. I just wanted to play shows, break shit, and get fucked, and fuck, Like, that's all I really cared about as a 22-year-old at the time, I didn't really have any worldwide ambitions to become prolific. I didn't have any ambitions or aspirations to take over the world like BTS at the time. I just wanted to keep doing music, because that's what the calling card was in my head early on in life. So there was a lot of things at the time that I was not very proud of. I'm very ashamed of look back on, really. Like I had a Zanga account and I had a live journal before the days of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok and all these other apps on Snapchat or like stuff like that in today's world. But I had a Zanga and LiveJournal at the time, and I had a MySpace, both personal and for the band. To this very day, I don't want anyone to look back on my old accounts that are even still active and can be accessed on the internet, because there's a lot of content I wrote that at the time that I was very ashamed of, like the suicide notes, the rants and raves and stuff like that. Looking back on those things, I'm kind of glad I deleted my Zanga account whenever that was in the 2000s, because I don't want any stands of PLB to look back on my life and look back on how he became PLB to present day from start to finish, saying, wow, Patrick had a very unhappy childhood. They don't know what to say. I don't want to mislead people to think that I had a very tragic upbringing, even though there was some things in my personal life in my childhood that was not very pleasant to look back on, which I wouldn't really wish on even my children or anyone else in this planet who's just starting out learning the ropes of life, really. So there was a lot of things about because I'm a kind of guy that takes my life very very one day at a time. It's like back in those days, there was like a lot of society pressuring me, and a lot of people coming down hard on me in the music scene and everything, and even the Asian American community. And I really lost a lot of good self esteem because of that, really. And I don't look back on those things very fondly, but it happened though. I use it as a learning experience. I don't think about it too much because it's been like 16 years since these things actually happened in my life. When I'm not playing a guitar in the garage, so to speak, and hitting the record button on my computer or pour the studio task scam, and it happened, but So 2008 rolled around, and I was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's make this happen. Let's make it work. I'm about to go to CSU East Bay as a transfer student, get that college degree, and get my fucking shit together finally. But it wasn't that way at all, really. I was dealing with a lot of personal hell with people of all kinds. There's a lot of people who say very bad things about me. There's a lot of people who did a lot of shady stuff around me, different types. I've been caught everything by the book, really. And I don't really appreciate that, really. Back in the 2000s, if you're a male and you dealt with all this kind of stuff, it was considered normal, so to speak. And you're a man, you can take big boy pants on and take it as it is and move on with it. But what people failed to realize back then was people have different ways of reacting towards things like that, of that nature. Not everyone is strong and has the thick skin to deal with all of that, really. And it really affects our psyche, so to speak, our mental health, so to speak, and people didn't really take cyberbullying and bullying and all these kind of forms of injustice and oppression back in those days like into consideration like we do now. They're like thinking, oh, you're a man, you get through it. You're a woman, haha, so what? They just look at you in a very different kind of way. They'll just judge you, belittle you, and make you look like a scum of the earth, really, which was not the case at all for people like us. So these days it's very different now because we have the cyberbullying ways to deal with cyberbullying legally in jurisdiction. People can actually go to jail for cyberbullying these days and actually be incarcerated, which they very well should be, because the band PLB is a band that has a zero tolerance policy on cyberbullying, harassment, and other forms of oppression such as racism and sexism and anti-LGBT mindset. And I always preserve that authenticity as an artist, really. But I was dealing with that in 2008, and I was not really a happy camper because my mom and dad had a trial separation, and my mother moved to Antioch with my brother. I was stuck at home in San Francisco with my father at the time, and the only thing that really kept my mind off the fuzz was like I was playing guitar, rocking out in the studio, and I was like, despite not playing any shows, because at the time I wasn't really good enough to play shows. I didn't have a band to play shows with. It's not like how today we have these technologies to go like present this music to a larger audience, the backing tracks, the laptops, all this kind of digital shit that can present Patrick Luban or whatever guys he goes through on stage and make it sound fat like my two fingers. But other than that, back in those days, technology was more limited and scarce back in those days, and I didn't have as much professional experience doing what I was doing at the time, so I wasn't really playing shows with PLB during those years, really. It was just like once in a while kind of thing for me, really, because the studio was where I was really garnering and working and perfecting and owning my sound and my talent and my craft, and at the time it was not really good enough for a lot of people to in the music scene. I was really uneducated about the music business, and this is a very cutthroat business, and I was not really promoted because of my race or whatever fucking invalid reason it was at the time, and it would be years before like Patrick Luban would ever even make any strides in the music scene doing all the small things. Not to quote a song title from Blink 182 sung by Tom DeLonge, and it just gradually took time for it to happen, really. But I started a new lineup of PLB at the time, right, and with some former friends from college, and it was a very dysfunctional band. It was just not the band I envisioned it to be, really, and by 2012 it was gonzo, really, like it was not the band I originally had in mind, because the musicians I hired to become the backbone of the Patrick Lou band, rhythm section, lead guitar, whatever. Other than David, who's my close friend, the other members were just like shady ass motherfucking dumbasses, really. And I had the dubious honor of actually meeting them when I was in university at Cal State East Bay. So I'm not gonna mention them by name because I could be held liable for it. But they really did do a lot more damage to the PLB legacy than actually improved it early on in our careers. But this was the K Day, really. We're just a garage band making some noise, dangerous, young, hungry, ready to like rock out, without any rhyme, reason, or cause. That was Patrick Lou Band from our prime, our initial prime from between 2008 to 2012, and that's what we pretty much did was we're gonna work on these songs in our home studios, copy and paste it together on our computers, and just put it out there for everyone to listen to on these music websites for indie artists and stuff like that. And Spotify was not even a thing yet, really. So like, we didn't really have the investments or funds to sell these musics to the worldwide masses at the time on these platforms. It will be a little bit later when I actually landed a day job and actually made decent income where I was able to invest into my passions and put my music out there to a larger audience. And when the services got better for the technology for music, the music technology digitally got a lot better in the later years, and the changing mindsets towards Asian American men in mainstream was what led to that success in Patrick Lang in later years, pretty much.